The whispering pines. There was something unsettling about the old house at the edge of the forest. Its towering, gnarled frame stood like a dark sentinel, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the woods. For years, the locals whispered of it, a place no one dared to visit, not even during the daylight hours. But tonight, a storm raged through the valley, and a curious man named Thomas stood before its creaking door. He was a journalist from the city, known for his skepticism and his need to uncover the truth behind every mystery. He had come to the village to investigate the strange disappearances of several hikers and campers in the area. The people here were tight-lipped, exchanging wary glances but never saying much. No one had ventured into the forest for years, and for good reason, they said. But Thomas was determined to get to the bottom of it. He believed in science, in reason, and in the idea that no mystery was too great for the sharp edge of logic. The stories were simply superstition, and he was certain that the truth could be found with enough persistence. As the rain hammered down, he pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and rotting wood. Dust hung in the air, disturbed only by his presence. The floorboards groaned under his weight as he moved through the dimly lit hallway, his flashlight illuminating the shadows that stretched across the walls like dark fingers. The walls seemed to pulse with the sounds of the storm outside, but there was something more, something deeper. A soft, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to vibrate from the very foundation of the house. Shivers ran down Thomas's spine, but he ignored them, moving forward with determination. There had to be an explanation. Perhaps a serial killer had been using the house as a base of operations. Maybe the forest was hiding something, something human, something that could explain the disappearances. Whatever it was, he would find it. The house seemed to stretch forever, the hallway winding in odd, unpredictable directions. At one point, he stumbled upon a set of stairs that led downward into a dark, oppressive basement. He hesitated for a moment, but then, driven by the promise of uncovering something that could give him the story of a lifetime, he descended. The basement was cold and damp, and the walls were lined with shelves filled with old, forgotten relics. But it wasn't the abandoned furniture or the cobwebs that caught his attention. It was the sound. A low whisper, like voices murmuring in a language he couldn't quite understand, echoed from the corners of the room. His heart raced as he crept further into the darkness, the beam of his flashlight dancing wildly over the shelves, casting long, eerie shadows. Suddenly, there was a movement. A figure, pale and translucent, stood at the far end of the room, its back turned to him. Thomas's breath caught in his throat as he froze, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. The figure was tall, its features indistinct like a smear of fog. It was wearing what appeared to be an old, tattered coat, the fabric fraying and stained. It didn't move, not at first, but Thomas could feel its presence, watching him, waiting. With trembling hands, he raised the flashlight higher, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure turned slowly, its face still obscured by shadows. But then, as the beam of light swept over it, Thomas saw it. The eyes, hollow black voids that seemed to suck in the very light around them, stared directly into his soul. A cold chill crawled up his spine as the air grew impossibly heavy. The whispers grew louder, until they were a cacophony of voices, overlapping and blending into one unholy sound. The words were now clear, in a language he could understand, and they were speaking his name. Thomas. Thomas. His legs felt like lead, his body frozen with terror. The figure began to move toward him, its movements jerky and unnatural, like something that wasn't quite alive, wasn't quite human. The whispers intensified, the words twisting and contorting, wrapping around him like chains. He wanted to run, to escape, but his body wouldn't obey. His mind screamed at him to move, but his feet remained glued to the floor. The figure was almost upon him now, and he could feel the cold emanating from it, seeping into his skin, freezing him from the inside out. His flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light that made the figure's movements seem even more disturbing, as though it were flickering in and out of existence. "Leave, now," The voice was no longer a whisper. It was clear, demanding, and full of malice. "Leave or join us." And then the world seemed to tilt. The house groaned and trembled as if it were alive, a dark, pulsing heartbeat echoing through the walls. Thomas's vision blurred, his mind struggling to grasp reality as the figure's face contorted into something grotesque, something inhuman. The shadows around him seemed to move, reaching toward him with long, clawed hands, pulling him into the darkness. Desperately, Thomas staggered backward, his heart racing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But no matter how fast he moved, the figure was always there, its presence growing stronger, more suffocating. The voices rose to a deafening crescendo, a whirlwind of sound that seemed to tear at his sanity. And then the world went black. When Thomas awoke, he found himself lying on the cold, damp floor of the basement. The storm had stopped, and the house was eerily silent. His body ached, his head throbbing with a dull, unrelenting pain. He tried to move, but his limbs felt heavy, as if they no longer belonged to him. The house seemed different now. The oppressive feeling had lifted, but something else had replaced it, an eerie emptiness, a sense of being watched. He looked around, but there was no sign of the figure, no trace of the horror that had gripped him only moments before. Had it all been a hallucination, a trick of the mind, brought on by exhaustion and fear? As he staggered to his feet, he caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. On the wall, scratched into the wood with jagged, uneven marks, was a message. It was short, but the meaning was unmistakable. "You should have left." The words were barely visible, hidden in the shadows, but they were there, as clear as the fear rising in his chest. Thomas's heart skipped a beat as he realized the truth. The house wasn't just haunted by spirits. It was alive, feeding on fear, drawing people in like moths to a flame. And now it had claimed him. A soft whisper came from behind him, chilling his bones. "Welcome to the forest, Thomas." He turned, but there was nothing there. Only the shadows, stretching out like fingers, reaching for him. And in that moment he understood. The whispers, the eyes, the figure, it had all been a warning. The house had been waiting for him, just like it had waited for the others. And now it was too late to escape. The forest had claimed him, and he was just another lost soul, another whisper in the dark.